and you are answering a real gap in a lot of care. I even think that when it comes to the care of introverted kids, like do they even feel they can speak up? Will anyone listen? And so you're just such an advocate for both the parent and the teen. Last time I had you on, we were talking about being an introverted parent and what that's like. And so I'm happy to have you back and to be talking about your new online course. So exciting. So everyone, Tracy has an online course and she's going to give you a little teaser today. But Tracy, take it away. You're a friend of the Brave Parent Institute. You are someone who advocates. You're a therapist. You are absolutely amazing. So welcome, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Connie. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here, and I love talking about this. I'm always happy when people show up and want to hear what I have to say. So I'm just going to pull up my PowerPoint here. Oh, it says that I can't, Connie. It says it's disabled.
Oh, let me help you out.
Okay.
Let me see if I can fix that.
Okay.
And if I can't, is anybody in here technologically inclined? Because, oh, there you go.
Oh, okay, let me try again. Oh, perfect, it's going to allow me. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I'm going to go through my PowerPoint, and then there'll be time at the end for questions. So if people either want to pop it in the chat as we go, or just at the end can ask them. Okay, so yeah, so I'm going to be talking about parenting your introverted teen. So this is the agenda, and it should take about 30 minutes to go through it, and then again, time for questions and answers at the end. So I'll just do a brief introduction about myself. I'll talk about why I think this is an important topic. I'm going to talk about the extrovert ideal and how that impacts people. I'll define what introversion is, highly sensitive. I'll talk about some of the common stressors of introverted teens. And then I'll share what I believe are healthy behaviors in introverted teens and then concerning behaviors, what they look like when they're struggling. And then I'll end around tips for teens and tips for parents. Okay, so I'm a social worker and I've been doing counseling for about 15 years. And 4 of those in private practice. And probably my last 3 years of counseling, I focused more on introverted teens and adults, and really, and even what Connie was saying, just really seeing a gap in services there that like I was starting to notice my quiet clients didn't really understand themselves, didn't like themselves. So as I brought that into the counseling session, it just helped them make so much more sense about who they are and really helped them start to like who they are and know what works best for them. I'm also a parent of 2 introverts and 1 extrovert. And why I bring that up is because I really get to see in my own home how this plays out. So my oldest, who's almost 15, he's like that, like when you think of that stereotypical introvert, that's him, like that anxious, kind of uptight computer guy. My middle guy is a highly sensitive introvert, so this really kind of tender heart. And then my youngest is more of a shy extrovert. So it's really interesting to watch how these different personalities interact with the world and then how the world interacts with them and kind of what friendships look like, if they have issues at school, how they show up. So I just get a lot of learning from my kids as well. For myself, I discovered I was introverted and more sensitive at around the age of 40. And why, to me, that's important to bring up, because that means that I spent so many years of my life thinking that there was something wrong with me. Why can't I talk more? Why can't I be outgoing? How come I can't just easily join a group conversation? And then once that piece landed for me, I started to make so much more sense to myself. My anxiety started to disappear. My depression started to go away. So again, just knowing this about myself changed so many things for me. And then just the other thing that I want to say, when I talk to parents, I think there's so much judgment around parenting. So I just want to bring up that in this space, that there's really no judgment here. That I think as parents, we're told there's 1,000 correct ways to parent. So no matter how we're parenting, it's like we're doing it the wrong way. And I really believe that as parents, we are doing the best that we can. So if things that I'm offering that you feel like, oh, why didn't I know that? I missed that. If you could give yourself some grace and say you're learning, and we're all learning as we go through life. Okay. So this is why I think this is important to talk about. So in the last year or so, I've had more clients in their late teens and early 20s show up. And what I'm really seeing in these young people is that they don't like who they are. And these are kids that have come from really nice families, not really any kind of trauma. Like we're not talking about abuse that they've dealt with. So they've had pretty regular good lives and they don't like who they are. And what I'm really seeing is because of their quietness, that's why they don't like who they are. And so really wanting to go back a little bit when kids are younger and to really help them understand who they are, because I really think that's going to make a difference. And I find in these clients, they either overwork, so they're in university and they're just working so hard and they never take a break, or they're underachieving. They just kind of can't really figure out adult life. And again, I really see it's because they're feeling like they're flawed. So either they have to work so hard to show that they're a good person, or why bother because I'm not good enough anyways. There's a lot of depression and anxiety in this age group. And then the sense of fragile relationships. And even if they do have good friendships, they don't feel that these are strong friendships. And they feel like they might be taking up too much space. There's something wrong with them. So why would their friends want to hang out with them anyways? I find that they're not dating at all. And I know dating kind of has changed with social media and those pieces. But I find my clients at this age, they're not dating because they think nobody would want to date them, which I think comes from a very different place. And then I really believe it doesn't have to be like this. The one thing that I really appreciate what Connie says is about shifting culture. And this is really what kind of what I'm hoping to do is like really creating a space for quiet people just get to be quiet without that judgment there, and they can really like themselves. And it really does start to change how they show up. So I'm going to talk about the expert ideal. And there's a book called Quiet by Susan Cain. And this is where I came across this, and she names it so well. And the extrovert ideal is that standard that we're all, in a really subtle way, told we're supposed to meet. So we're supposed to be outgoing, talkative, friendly. If somebody is rude to us, we're supposed to just easily stand up for ourselves. And having lots of friends is the right way to be. And then often this behavior gets rewarded. So these are typically, they might be the more popular kids at school. They might be the kids that get called on, to do kind of, special things at school. So the quiet kids are watching all of this. And there are some quiet people that actually can look like they're introverted. They can really show up and act the right part, but they're still exhausted because they know they're not being their true self. So that quiet teen is often feeling really abnormal, really broken. And so I think once there's awareness of this extrovert ideal, it can really help, again, open up that conversation around that. So it's going to define introversion. So the obvious one is that needing time away from others to recharge. So there's that, really needing that quietness, no conversation. You just get to be on your own and think deeply. And that's a really good space for introverted people to be in. We tend to work better on our own. So in school, group projects are, I don't know if extroverts like them, but there's like a bit of torture for introverted people to have to do that. We tend to be more private. So even if we have good connections, there's still a certain level of sharing that we don't do, and a really normal thing. We tend to be more independent. So we're going to work longer at something before we ask for help. We really try to figure things out on our own. It's hard to manage making mistakes. And with this one, I'm not quite sure why this is, but for some introverted people, making a mistake is about the worst thing that could ever happen, even if there's very little consequence for it. So like it's a lot of internal chaos that will happen. And this is where that perfectionism can start to show up, or that I'm not even going to bother trying because it's like that belief, if I don't try, I didn't make a mistake. And then again, introversion is still I still believe it's largely misunderstood. There's much more information out there, but still a fair amount of not understanding it. And I do find that with the teens, that I think this is one of the harder times to be quiet because there's more expectation that they're going to be social, going to be going out with friends, with COVID right now, it's a bit different. But this is where their quietness can really start to show up and that they can start to feel embarrassed about that. I'm going to talk about highly sensitive people. And the reason, so highly sensitive people, they make up about 20% of the population, but 70% of highly sensitive people are also introverted. So some of the introverts out there like are also sensitive. Um, so I think it's just good to name that as well. So highly sensitive people tend to feel their emotions deeper. Um, the ones where I'd like to share about that with my middle guy about 3 years ago. So he would have been about 9. He was taking piano lessons, and him and his teacher really liked each other. It was this really special student-teacher relationship. And so he was with her for about a year and a half, and then she moved out of the city, which meant the relationship had to end. And he really had to grieve it. And he cried, and he cried, and he cried. And we just really had to sit with him and let him cry. And the solution was getting a new piano teacher, which we did, but he still had to grieve her. And because he feels things deeply. So there wasn't anything wrong with him. And then now he can talk about her, he can miss her without that deep grief because he was able to express it. They also feel the emotions of others deeply. So, if a friend's upset, so they're really like they might really worry about that friend. If if there's tension in the household, they're really picking up on that. Their feelings get hurt easy. So these are kids that you have to be like, not that you can't tease them, but there has to be kind of a really respectful way to tease them because sometimes things just go in so deep, and even the person's not purposely doing it. They're sensitive to how they're talked to, and with that, and my kids taught me this. My 2 boys is that sometimes I would like in my trying to get them out the door for school, being irritated because they're being kids, they're being slow, and I would just turn the notch up a bit to say, hey, like you need to get going. And then I would hear like, Mom, don't yell at me. And I have yelled at my kids, but in this example, I knew I didn't yell at them. But what I learned is that they felt like I yelled at them. So again, just as a parent, and I'm not saying don't raise your voice, but just again, that awareness of how that can impact them. And then the one thing I especially see with males, being introverted and highly sensitive is quite difficult because these males, they're not even close to fitting that male stereotype. And not that I think men should, but they just feel so just so flawed because like when I talk about my son and crying about his piano teacher, there's a very feminine kind of behavior to that. And 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 males get such strong messaging about they shouldn't feel, they should be strong, they should be in charge. And these males tend to be more soft spoken, like to just observe. So hearing a lot of messages. So when I think about the teen boys at school, that yeah, like they can have a lot of shame about who they are. Okay, and just some of the common stressors that these kids will deal with. And really what I'm talking about is essentially how anxiety can show up. So there can be really worrying about saying the wrong thing. So sometimes I'll have clients share that, so they want to maybe speak up at school, they want to say something in a friend group, and they'll practice that thing in their head over and over again until they're finally ready to share it. And then when they're ready to share it, the conversation's moved on. So, they could bring the conversation back, but kind of tricky to do, but they'll work to make sure they try to say the right thing. And then sometimes meaning they don't say anything at all. Again, worrying about making a mistake. So this could be at school. They work really hard to get those assignments done. Or they try to be almost like the perfect friend, always being available to other kids. They can worry about other family members, friends. So if there's, recent cancer diagnosis, maybe grandma's in the hospital, she's sick, depending on what's happening with families with COVID, that these kids can really kind of take that on and feel it. The one other thing that I usually see often is they'll take care of others by not sharing their struggles. So again, these kids are really observing. They know how mom's doing. They know how dad's doing. Maybe they see that teacher's kind of looks a bit overwhelmed. So they'll be like, well, I'll just kind of keep this inside. In their independence, in their privacy, they'll really hold that in. So Yeah, so it can be really good to kind of check in with them and give them that invitation to talk about how they're doing. These kids can also worry a lot about social issues, environmental issues. So their worrying almost goes global in that way. And yeah, and again, just checking in with them around that. Social media can really actually create a lot of, I think social media creates a lot of stress for everybody, but I think especially these kids, if they're seeing all of these issues out there, and then they worry about people that they don't even know. And then they can try really hard to do the right thing. So they're very considerate. Sometimes this means not taking care of themselves and more taking care of others. Being put on the spot for them is quite difficult. Like at school, if they're called upon, um, it can be really hard that because if they're not prepared to answer a question, then it's a bit like their mind goes blank. There's nothing there, even though, if let's say somebody asked how was school the other day, they know how to answer that question, but it's like the information just isn't there for them. Um, and then all of this, I think I did say, really kind of feeds into that anxiety that can happen for them. Then I'm going to talk about healthy behaviors and concerning behaviors. And with this is what I've come up with just in my work with these kids and just with my own kids as well. So I would say that healthy behavior for more introverted teens is having 2 or 3 close friends. So if they don't have 5 friends, 8 friends, that there's nothing concerning about that. And and it's also common that these 2 or 3 friends might not actually be a friend group. So it might be, so I know my oldest, he has a friend from our old community. He has a friend from where he took, I think, soccer, and then a friend at school, right? So it's not a group of friends, but he's still well connected there. If these kids are connected to 1 or 2 teachers at school, and and to me that's showing that the teachers are seeing them and that they also really like those teachers. If they're able to ask for help at school, this one does tend to be more tricky for kids. And even when I've talked to teachers about this, that I know one math teacher, he said they use the term the reluctant askers. So it's those kids that when so he was a math teacher. So when he marks a math test, that's when he sees that these kids are struggling. They're not coming to him. They're not asking for help. So so really being able to help these kids ask for help when they need it, they get to take up space. When they can spend time on their own, but it's not isolating. So, maybe they get home from school, they head up to their room, whether they listen to music or video games, but then they come back out of their room and they're still socializing. And then they're sharing with their parents. So, as a parent, you have a good idea, that like what are some of the positive things happening for them, what are some of the negative things happening. That and because these kids are more private, you're likely not going to know everything. Like I think with my extroverted daughter, sometimes I wonder if she has a thought that I don't know about. Right? I'm sure she does, but these with my boys, feel like I have a good idea of what's going on for them, but not the in-depth way I do with my daughter. They're able to express feelings as it comes up. So, and I think that introverted or extroverted, I think is really important. And then have some tools to manage anxiety. So if they are more anxious, that they know what they're anxious about, and then they know kind of what they can do about that. Uh, so then these are some of the concerning behaviors that I see. So having one friend, no current friends, or the friends aren't local. Now with having one friend, that in and of itself is not concerning, but friendships shift. And kind of when we're talking about teens, kind of 13 to 18, developmentally, there's so much change that happens there. So if they have one friend and that friend starts dating, or your teen gets a job, or the friend moves away, so it's to have one friend puts a lot of stress on that one friendship. And if things shift, then very quickly that introverted kid is now doesn't have any friends, and that's a really hard place to be. So if they don't have any current friends, or if friends aren't local, and sometimes I'll see this with my clients that they seem to be well connected, but it's all online. So if they wanted to go, once we get out of COVID, if they wanted to go to a movie, wanted to go to the mall, they actually don't have anybody local to do that with. And and then if there's a history of struggling with friendships, so often it's that making friends and maintaining friends. And with that, I always I always make the assumption that when they're struggling with friendships, it's actually a reflection more about how they feel about themselves. So there is a piece about kind of like teaching, like those practical skills to make friends. But if we don't like ourselves, it's really hard to make friends. Or we make friends with people that might not treat us very well. So it's really looking at kind of what are those internal barriers that get in the way, and the concerning behavior if they're spending most of their time in their room. Um, yeah, and then as a parent, like you don't really know what's happening. Um, so it becomes more isolating versus, just taking some solitude there. And then as a parent, you really feel like you don't have an idea of like what are the positive things happening, what are the negative things happening, just like that disconnect there. If they have a history of really not having connections at school, and more, I mean, with that, connections with teachers, um, and then they avoid talking about things, and then you see that they're quite anxious about lots of things, but don't have the tools to manage it, and might not be open to having those conversations. It's hard for teens to talk about anxiety. I think that I know with my oldest, he's a pretty anxious guy, so I think it was maybe just about 3 weeks ago, he was studying for his learner's license, and he would study and study and study, and then he would go and write the test. And how they do it is that as soon as you get an answer wrong, it tells you, and if you get six wrong, you're done. So every time he would get a wrong answer, his anxiety would go up and up and up. And because he really wanted to pass it, then he was finally open to talking about anxiety. So I think they have to have a good reason to talk about it. Kind of something good at the end is helpful. And so some of what you'll see when they're struggling, so again, lots of anxiety. It's just kind of all over the place. You might see avoidance. So they kind of avoidance going to school, and even, now with kids being home, they might not want to go online. They might not want to do the work. Again, isolating, a big blowout. The one thing that's common for introverts, whether it's teens or adults, and I don't know why we can do this, but we're so good at containing. So we can feel lots of terrible emotions and we can just hold it inside and not really a big indicator of what's happening. And we can be calm, we can be calm, we can be calm, and then we're not, right? We just kind of lose it. And then the person that we've kind of lost it on can be quite confused, overwhelmed. But it's really, especially for introverts, an indicator that something's been brewing for a while there. Right? They're not communicating, so you don't really have a sense of what's happening. Um, and I find with a lot of my clients too, there's a lot of physical responses. So there's stomach aches, headaches, which to me is how the anxiety is now showing up physically in their body, and then a lot of negative self-talk there. Okay, then I'm going to go through tools for teens and then for parents, and I won't go into them in a lot of depth, but just kind of to touch on them. So helping them deal with the overwhelm. So as introverts, we don't do great when we're rushed. We don't do great when we have lots to do. So kind of helping them manage that, and especially if a teen's a high achiever. I know some of my clients, they're kind of at that high academic level, and then if they're kind of like in dance and hockey and whatever that sport is, they're also kind of working at that high level. So they're capable of doing a lot, but they might not actually know how to handle the overwhelm of that. So learning some skills around that, skills around dealing with emotions. I think we kind of live in an anti-feeling world. So I think we all can kind of learn a bit more about how to kind of sit with our emotions, let ourselves feel those emotions, helping them learn how to ask for help. And even this can just be practicing that, or finding different ways. So is emailing a teacher better than, going up to your teacher in class or asking the question over a Zoom call when they're doing online school? Like what are different ways that they can ask for help? And then learning the difference between solitude and isolation. And to me, solitude is like when I go away from people and then I feel better, I feel reconnected with myself, and then I'm looking forward to joining people again. And then to me, isolation is no matter how long I'm away from people, I'm not feeling any better. So, and then to me, this is more the world of that depression, anxiety, and an indicator, and it can help. I think that can be a good indicator for teens that maybe you do need to be doing something different, and connecting with friends. And I think this can be a bit tricky because sometimes, like, so an extroverted friend has more social needs than an introverted friend. So then sometimes the introverts actually get left out because they might get lots of invites, but they don't want to take all the invites. But then the other friends might just assume, well, they don't want to ever be invited. So kind of helping them have those conversations to help themselves understand that, and then potentially having those conversations with friends, and then tools for dealing with anxiety. And I always think a good place to start with that is noticing what makes the anxiety bigger, what makes it smaller. And then I always think that's a good starting place because then it shows that anxiety isn't a permanent state for them. Is that because anxiety is quite a powerful emotion, and the bigger it gets, the more overwhelming it gets. But then when we see that it actually isn't permanent, we start to feel we have a sense of power, a sense of control, and then they can do more of what works. And then those things that do make them anxious, even just being able to talk about that can help lower the anxiety. Okay. And then some tools for parents. The one thing I didn't put in here is learning more about and I think that's the one thing that's been really helpful to my boys is being able to talk about, you know, you're more likely to do that because you're introverted. They don't always love it when I say it because there is still some stigma around being introverted, but I still offer the information, I offer my insights, and so then they feel more understood. Because kind of in this extroverted world, they often don't feel understood. And then, as I said earlier, our tone of voice can make a big difference. Um, and I know that, and I find too, if I want my quieter kids to listen to me, I need to make my voice quieter. If I want my extroverted daughter to listen to me, I need to kind of go louder because that's just kind of what works best for them. And then in terms of helping kind of conversations happen more, because sometimes that's a concern that some of the parents that I work with will like how do I get my teen to talk to me more? And so it's just kind of showing up a bit differently. So then if they are talking about something, asking questions with them from a place of curiosity. So it might be, so maybe they, kind of had a bad day at school and they're sharing that with you. It might be, like, I wonder why you decided to do that versus, I don't know why you did that. Because it's like the kind of the intention is the same to like to find out more what was going on. But when the question is asked with curiosity, it just really helps shift that conversation. The other thing is building tolerance to sit with their emotions. So if your teen is more highly sensitive, you does seem to feel more. And that's what we had to do with our middle guy is really had to learn how to sit with a lot of emotion without offering solutions. And I know sometimes that for parents, that's a tricky thing, right? Because we want our kids to be okay. We want them to be equipped. But sometimes the solution is sitting with them with their emotions. So they don't have to be in that hard place by themselves. Sometimes these teens have a hard time really labeling what's going on for them because when their internal world is so deep and sometimes chaotic that it's like they can feel it but they can't speak it. So sometimes offering a menu can be helpful. So I wonder if you're having a bad day because your friend ignored you or you got your science test back and you didn't do as great as you thought you did, right? So then it just gives them, and you might be wrong with both of those, but then it might help them locate. It's like, no, actually, I was up late last night worrying about the test, and I think that's why I'm not having a good day. The other thing is really listening to these kids, um, and I probably 4 years ago with my oldest, like this was kind of my learning, is that when he would start telling me something, I would go into teaching, right? So, well, next time that happens, why don't you do this and this? And then he shut down, right? So I had to learn, like I just had to listen to him, and and even listening to those things that might be boring to listen to. Like I know a lot about Fortnite. I know a lot about, I don't know, Among Us. I know a lot about kind of things that I never will need to know in my day-to-day life. But when we listen to our kids, then they'll share a bit more. We listen a bit more, they share a bit more. And as much as you can to try to remember some of that. So I know the basics of Fortnite. I know the basics kind of their favorite game. So they know that I care enough to remember. And then I hear about it was a hard day at school because, right? And the same like, when I meet with my teen clients, again, like still really that listening to them. Um, and then this question, what do you think? And to me, this kind of feels like my magic question. And so sometimes we do have to offer our teen solutions, right? We can't just be listeners. We can't just ask with curiosity. Sometimes, if whether it's with one of my clients or with my kids, if if they're struggling, let's say they're struggling with a friend at school. So I'll give a little synopsis of what I think. Um, like I wonder if you're upset because this thing happened, and then you stop talking to that person. Now you don't know how to fix it. What do you think about that? So one, it gives them permission to think about it. And as introverts, when we're given that permission, most of us will take that in that moment to think about it. And then it also says you want to hear what they have to say. So as a parent, we're not saying, I'm right, and I'll tell you the answer. It's like, these are my thoughts. What do you think about that? And as our kids are moving along developmentally, it helps them kind of slowly enter the adult world like that, when we can have these kinds of conversations with them. And I think the last thing, and it's maybe not so much a tool, but just I do think these kids take a lot of patience, um, because we do have to do a lot of kind of asking with curiosity, you're sitting with some emotions, and sometimes we don't understand like why they're so upset. And I think that can be true for extroverted kids as well. But just these kids worry about taking up too much space. So if we can have lots of patience, which shows them that there's a lot of space for them, they're much more likely to take up that space. And yeah, so I'm just going to end just with the ways that I help, and then I'll talk a bit about the course. So, and I know I've mentioned this, so I offer counseling for introverted teens and adults, as well as for introverted sensitive parents, because I find sometimes when we get into the parenting world, it can be a lot to manage as an introvert. And then the online class for parents. So I just go to my next screen. So I just released this course a few weeks ago, and it's called Parenting Your Introverted Teen. So some of what I've covered today is in it, but it goes into more in-depth understanding of introverted teens, and then again more in-depth for the tools for teens and tools for parents. Because again, I think there's not enough information out there for parents, and then for teens as well. That often when I have a new client, a new teen client, they just like they can speak to the overwhelm, they can speak to I feel awkward, I don't fit in, but they don't know why, right? So it can help them. It's not for teens, but it's for parents to help them understand the world of teens, and then some tips to go with that. Um, and then for anybody who's interested in buying it, there's a coupon that goes with that. This is all new to me, so if you do buy the course and something didn't work, let me know, and I will take care of it as best I can. Yeah, so there's a link there if you're interested in buying it, and yeah, and the coupon. So yeah, so that is what I had for today. So if there is any questions, yeah, I would be happy to answer.
That's wonderful. No, thank you, Tracy. I learned so much. I mean, I felt like you were just pinpointing my voice the whole time. And so, yeah, any questions, please post them in the chat. Tammy says, great tips, Tracy. She's learned a lot. Keeping the counseling in mind, that's great. And Kimberly, oh, you just bought it, Kimberly. That's
Oh,
wonderful. I hope you use the code.
yeah, I hope you did too.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so, just out of curiosity, so like, what kind of discount are they getting with this Brave coupon today?
Yeah, well, the course full price is $99, and so it's 50% off. So I guess like $47, I think. So
Okay,
yeah.
seriously? Okay, wait. Okay, I did not know this. I did not know. I'm gonna get up in here, everyone. It's $99. This is a clinical counselor. This isn't Connie offering some kind of course. And Tracy did not ask me to do this, but I just believe so much in what she does. And like I said, I've really gotten to know Tracy through our Brave Speakers program. And of course, even before that, she's a friend of the Brave Parent Institute. And a friend of the Brave Parent Institute is basically people who I've just pinned as like people who have something that parents need. And I haven't heard of any course for $50 And so you know what? I'm gonna do a draw. Tracy, I'm gonna buy one of your courses,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna pay full price because I just absolutely love what you're doing. And I'm gonna be sending this recording out. Not only is this on Facebook Live, but this is also going to be sent out to all of you who are here because you all registered. But then there was a lot of people who couldn't make it as well. I believe there's 39 people registered, and some people just get the recording. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a draw. So this is what you need to do. If you are in the mail out, so I'm going to be emailing you this recording tomorrow. If you get this recording, all I want you to do is email me back and say, I want in. And then we will draw for one of these. However, that's only one, and there's 39. So if you're thinking, I have a child, I need to be able to have the tools to help my child. Can I just say that without learning a lot of these things, that I've had to learn in parenting, introverted children, sensitive children, children with anxiety, my son would not be doing well right now. And sometimes parents, I've had some pretty serious conversations with parents about, how many Starbucks will it take to just invest in something that will help your child and your parenting, because maybe your child will make it another day. And honestly, Tracy, I'm a huge fan. I think $50 is unbelievable. I think you're being so generous, and you're just willing to help. And so I think that this is a great opportunity and an affordable opportunity. Guys, that's 10 Starbucks coffees. That's like really nothing. And yes, Lane, please share the recording. In fact, if you have a workplace, a school, a community that needs this message for parents, like I said, we just don't hear this enough. And I think that's why I've been so drawn to what you're doing, Tracy, is because we don't hear this specific niche of helping people that are introverted. I think that you're doing such worthy work.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Connie. Yeah. And that's why I was pulled to do the course, is that just so it can get out to more people, and and just so parents just have those tools to help kind of with this, I don't want to say invisible kids, but it's just again like with that extrovert ideal, just seeing, well, they should be like that. So I try to get my kid to be like that. And yeah, and it doesn't work, right? So to help parents really understand they're quiet people. And yeah, and when I think about like how I feel now, if I felt like this as a teen, my life would have been so much better, right? So when these kids feel good about themselves, feel loved and supported for who they are, it's just like it changes things, like it really does.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Lane is wondering if you could speak more to the extroverted ideal.
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, it's a sometimes it's like it's a bit like it's the air we breathe, if that makes sense. Like it's just so there. Sometimes it's hard to name. Um, yeah, but these kids, like, yeah, so some, like, if you watch TV and then you'll see, and it's, I don't know how you could portray like a quiet, introverted person on TV, but it's like they're always big personalities. Like it's the extroverts that get all the attention, that are successful. I even find that, like, as I was building my business, I would start, I would come across things that, you have to be out networking and you have to have this huge connection and you have to, like, it was essentially you have to be extroverted in order to be successful. And, I went to networking events and I was quiet and awkward and I left and nothing happened. Right. But when I connect one on one with people, even how I've connected with you, right, there's growth in that. So that extrovert ideal told me there was a right way to show up as a business owner, then I'm going to get success. So then I do that and I don't get success. So it reinforces that I'm failing. There's another author, she uses the word failed extrovert, right? So often introverts feel like failed extroverts. So we're working hard, we're trying to be outgoing, and then we can't, so we give up, right? So I always think of these kids at school. And the one thing I've learned too, just with my own kids, as kids get bigger, so bodies get bigger and then voices get louder, right? So even like, these males that like how their voices get louder, these quiet kids, then they're just like so much more noise at school. And, those are typically the kids that are getting more attention. And it isn't necessarily good attention for sure. Um, but those are the kids that are being noticed. And also depending on the teachers. And I've actually seen a really positive shift in teachers of really understanding the quieter kids and appreciating them. But if teachers think that they need to talk more, and that's only feedback parents get, again, that reinforces that extrovert ideal. Because as introverts, we don't often verbally participate, but it's almost like we can cognitively participate. It's like we're there, we're listening, we're involved, we're just not sharing it, right? So it's like we fail because we're not sharing.
Right.
So yeah. And I think when I was in university, there was in a few of my classes, like 20% of our mark was based on participation. And like at that point, I'm an adult learner. I'm like, I get to learn how I want to learn. So, but again, like to me, that's that extrovert ideal that you have to contribute verbally in order, I don't know, to be successful at university. So yeah, I feel like I'm going on a bit of a rant now. So
It's a good rant.
it's a good rant. Okay.
You don't realize how extroverted our world really is, until you get into school and, like you said, university. And so, no, I think that's very valid. Laura, so Natalie just bought the course. That's awesome, Natalie. Wonderful. Tammy brings up a very good suggestion. So I met Tammy at Charter Connect School back, the science-based school, and she's saying this needs to be offered to teachers. She is an extroverted teacher. Tammy's wonderful, and how eye-opening this is to extroverted teachers. And Lane, yes, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, and I've put a bit of effort into connecting with schools, but it hasn't really been picked up. So yeah, so it makes me excited that that Tammy and Lane are seeing kind of the importance of this, and yeah.
Well, and a great place to start, if I could just add a suggestion there, Tammy and Lane, is maybe buy the course for your school and go through it and see if this is something that each teacher could buy. Maybe talk to Tracy about what it would look like to do an online workshop. But, $99, I mean, I know budgets are tight, but $99 is not a huge dent. It would be a great start and to see where that could go. Because, yeah, this was very enlightening. Laura's asking if the online course is something to be done on her own time, or is it, yeah.
Yeah, I think how I have it set up is, I think there's 5 modules, and that you can do it once a day, if that makes sense. Like module 1, day 1, module 2, day 2. Yeah, and you can do it at your own pace, and I think it's lifetime access. So once you buy it, it's yours. Like it doesn't go away.
Oh, so it always there's a resource.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's nice too is that, by purchasing a $99 course, then seeing kind of where the gaps are of, I think I need extra support here, then they can reach out to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love this work because I'd be happy to help schools and teachers as well. So.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. I have so loved this time, everyone. And so again, the link, if you would like it, it's further up in the chat now. I'm just going to put it a little lower in the chat with Tracy's email. Please reach out to her. She is just such a wealth of knowledge on so many areas. She's wonderful. Like I said, we just connected over coffee, and when I connected with her, I just realized that if the world doesn't have Tracy, then these kids continue to feel invisible and feel unseen, and introverted parents continue to feel unsuccessful or feel like they can't connect. So you're really giving parents and teens such valuable skills and tools. And I think what I love the most is that you're making people feel seen and heard and valued.
Yeah, thank you, Connie. Yeah, and that really means a lot to me. And yeah, I love doing this work, and you just love shifting this because yeah, we don't have to feel bad about who we are. So,
Oh, that's wonderful.
yes,
Oh, that's good.
yes.
Well, everyone, look out for my email tomorrow. You'll be getting the recording. And if you're on Facebook Live right now and you want to get the email and you're not on my email list, then message me, PM me, put your email if you're okay in the comments, because it's only going to be through email. So everyone who gets the email, all you have to do is I'm going to give you till midnight tomorrow night, and you just need to email me back and say, put me in the draw, and I will draw, and we'll see who wins this course. And again, how long would people have to access this brave 50% off, Tracy?
I believe I have it for 2 weeks.
Oh, that's
I
incredible.
believe. Yes.
Okay, guys,
Yeah.
2 weeks.
hmm
That's
It might be 1 week, but yeah, yeah. It's not just today. So
even a week. I mean, isn't that just wonderful? So thank you for being so generous. And that's friends of the Brave Parent Institute. This is what they're willing to do, is give discounts and be able to help our parents out. But in return, Tracy, like I said, we are so for you. We are cheering for you. We refer people to you. We make
thank
sure
you.
that people know about you. We're just big fans. So keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Connie. And again, I so much appreciate all your support with this.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, that's great. Sarah has bought a course. That is wonderful. And I'm so glad to hear Sarah. Sarah, look at that. She says that you're really helping her as well. Isn't that wonderful? Oh,
Yeah, thank you.
well, that's great.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much again, Tracy. And thank you everyone for coming. And look for my email tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Have
thank
a
you,
great
everyone.
day.
Yes, bye, Connie.
Bye now.